The rust-eaten walls of mining station Rigel 9 had witnessed better days, much like myself. I sat hunched over my workbench, soldering a circuit board that probably wasn't worth the effort, when the proximity alarms shrieked to life. Not the gentle chime of an expected visitor, but the bone-rattling wail reserved for unauthorized approaches. My name is Drake Callan, and 3 years ago, I was somebody. Strategic Operations Commander for the Interstellar Alliance. The golden boy who could predict enemy movements 3 steps ahead. Now I fix broken mining equipment on a station so remote that even pirates consider it beneath their notice. The fall from grace tends to be steep when you expose corruption that reaches into the highest echelons of power. Through the grimy viewport, I watched an alien craft descending toward my landing pad with all the grace of a drunken meteor. The ship lurched, overcorrected, then slammed into the platform hard enough to make the entire station shudder. Whoever was piloting that thing either had a death wish or had never seen a flight manual in their life. The vessel itself was a contradiction in metal and energy. Sleek, Zephyrian design corrupted by crude armor plating. Elegant propulsion systems jury-rigged with what looked like stolen military hardware. Someone had taken a diplomatic yacht and turned it into a getaway vehicle. I grabbed my plasma rifle from its mount, more out of habit than genuine concern. Nobody came to Rigel 9 unless they were running from something, and people running from something rarely stayed long enough to cause problems. The ship's ramp hissed open, venting atmosphere that glowed faintly purple in the station's harsh lights. A figure emerged from the vapor, and I forgot how to breathe. She stood maybe 6 feet tall, with skin that shifted between deep violet and midnight blue depending on how the light caught it. Her eyes blazed golden, literally blazed, with an internal fire that marked her as Kalaran nobility. The kind of beings who owned entire star systems and considered species like humans to be amusing pets at best. But it was her expression that caught me off guard, where I expected aristocratic disdain. I saw something wild, desperate, and utterly unhinged. You, she pointed at me with a finger that ended in a crystalline nail, are going to help me save the galaxy. I lowered my rifle slightly. Lady, I think you've got the wrong station. I'm just a mechanic. She laughed, and it sounded like wind chimes in a hurricane. Drake Callan, former Strategic Operations Commander, falsely accused of treason after exposing the Therian mining scandal, currently hiding in this delightful cesspit, while Lord Arxendal systematically destroys everything you once stood for. Her golden eyes narrowed. Did I miss anything? The name Arxendal hit me like a physical blow. 3 years, and hearing it still made my hands clench into fists. How do you know about that? Because, dear human, I have something Lord Dahl would kill entire planets to possess. She pulled a data crystal from her form-fitting suit, the kind that could store the entire cultural database of a civilization. The real records of what happened at Colony 7, the truth about your family, and evidence of what he's planning next. Colony 7, where my wife and daughter died in what the Alliance called a tragic reactor failure, where 30,000 souls were vaporized because they happened to live above a deposit of quantum crystals that Arxendal wanted. Who are you? My voice came out rougher than intended. She executed a mocking bow that somehow managed to convey both perfect etiquette and complete contempt for it. Karen Vera of House Vera, third daughter of the Celestial Court, keeper of unwanted truths, and according to my dear family, the single greatest diplomatic disaster in 4 centuries. She straightened, and that wild grin returned. But you can call me Miss Chaos. Before I could respond, the station's alarms changed pitch. The proximity warning became an invasion alert. Through the viewport, I saw them. 3 Enforcer-class vessels dropping out of hyperspace, their black hulls bristling with weapons that could turn my entire station into cosmic dust. Friends of yours, I asked. More like former business associates who've decided I know too much. Karen was already moving, her long legs carrying her past me toward the station's interior. We need to leave, now. I followed despite myself. Lady, I've been hiding here specifically to avoid this kind of trouble. She spun to face me, moving so fast her hair, a cascade of what looked like liquid starlight, whipped around her face. Drake Callan, in approximately 4 minutes. Those ships are going to reduce this station to its component atoms. You can die here, forgotten and irrelevant, or you can come with me and finally get your revenge on the man who took everything from you. The smart play was to let her go, to stay hidden, to keep my head down like I had for 3 years. But she'd said Colony 7. She'd said my family. She had answers I'd given up hope of ever finding. My ship's in Bay 2, I said, already running. It's faster than yours. Excellent, I crashed mine anyway. We sprinted through the station's corridors, our footsteps echoing off metal walls that had started to vibrate from the approaching ship's gravity wells. My vessel, the Vagrant's Hope, sat waiting in the secondary bay. She wasn't pretty, but I'd spent 3 years upgrading her with every piece of salvage tech I could find. Under her scarred hull beat the heart of a predator. As we reached the boarding ramp, Karen grabbed my arm. Her touch sent a jolt through me, her skin far warmer than I'd expected. There's something you should know. I don't actually know how to fly your human ships. Then it's a good thing I do. I pulled her up the ramp as the first impact shook the station. They were firing warning shots. The next ones wouldn't miss. The Vagrant's Hope came alive under my hands. Systems I'd lovingly maintained responding instantly. Through the cockpit window, I saw the Enforcer vessels positioning themselves to block any escape route. They thought they had us trapped. Hold on to something, I warned Karen, who had draped herself across the co-pilot seat like a cat that had found a sunbeam. Oh, this should be interesting, she purred. I fired up the main engines but didn't engage them. Instead, I activated the mining charges I'd installed along the station's superstructure months ago. Paranoid preparation for a day like this. The explosions tore through Rigel 9's hull, creating a cloud of debris and venting atmosphere that momentarily blinded the Enforcer's sensors. In that instant of chaos, I punched the throttle. The Vagrant's Hope shot forward, using the station's death throes as cover. We cleared the debris field, just as the Enforcers realized what had happened. Jump coordinates, I asked, already knowing we had seconds before they locked weapons on us. Karen produced a nav chip from somewhere in her suit. These will take us to someone who can decode the data crystal. I plugged it in without looking, trusting a complete stranger, because the alternative was death. The hyperdrive spooled up, reality bent, and we punched a hole through space itself. When we emerged, the stars were different. We floated in the shadow of a massive derelict, a ship from the old wars that drifted like a metal cemetery in space. Welcome to the graveyard, Karen said. The one place in the galaxy even Arxon Dahl fears to tread. I cut the engines, letting us drift. Why? Because this is where the free traders gather. Pirates, smugglers, revolutionaries, anyone who refuses to bow to the Alliance's authority. She turned those golden eyes on me. And more importantly, this is where we'll find the one person who can decrypt this data without getting us all killed. An alert flashed on my console. 3 ships were approaching, their configurations unlike anything in the Alliance database. As they drew closer, I realized they were cobbled together from parts of a dozen different species technologies, floating monuments to desperation and ingenuity. Let me do the talking, Karen said, activating the comm system. What came out of her mouth wasn't Galactic Standard, or any language I recognized. It sounded like music being played backward through broken glass. A response came back in the same language, and Karen laughed that wind chime laugh again. They want to know if we're buyers or sellers. What did you tell them? That we're revolutionaries. Of course. She leaned back in her seat. Oh, and I may have mentioned that I have information about Lord Dahl's plan to monopolize the quantum crystal trade. You what? Before she could answer, our ship lurched, Tractor beams from all three vessels locked onto us simultaneously, dragging us toward the derelict's massive docking bay. "Relax," Karen said, though her fingers were dancing nervously across the armrest. "These people hate Dahl as much as we do." Probably. Probably. Well, there's a 30% chance they'll just steal the data and sell us to the highest bidder. She flashed me that unhinged grin again. But that's what makes it exciting, doesn't it? As we were pulled into the derelict's belly, I wondered what I'd gotten myself into. The woman beside me was clearly insane. We were about to negotiate with pirates, using information that could start a galactic war. And somehow, for the first time in 3 years, I felt alive. The docking bay was a cavern of stolen technology and desperate innovation. Ships from every corner of the galaxy clustered together like refugees, their crews watching our arrival, with expressions that ranged from curiosity to hunger. Karen stood as the Vagrant's Hope touched down, smoothing her suit with movements that were simultaneously graceful and predatory. "Follow my lead," she said. "And whatever happens, don't mention that you're the Drake Callan. Your reputation here is complicated." "My reputation, I exposed corruption. I tried to do the right thing." She paused at the airlock, looking back at me with something almost like pity. "Yes, and in doing so, you caused the Alliance to crack down on free traders across 7 systems. These people lost everything because you wanted to be a hero." The weight of unintended consequences settled on my shoulders like an old, familiar burden. I'd been so focused on my own loss, I'd never considered the ripple effects of my actions. The airlock hissed open, and we stepped into chaos. The docking bay was a riot of species, sounds, and smells that assaulted every sense I had. A Thoranian merchant argued with a crystalline Veltar over the price of something that looked disturbingly organic. 2 humans arm-wrestled while a crowd placed bets in currencies I didn't recognize. And through it all, security drones floated like metallic angels of death, their weapons tracking every movement. A delegation waited for us at the bottom of the ramp. The leader was something I'd never seen before, a being that seemed to exist partially in our dimension and partially somewhere else, its form constantly shifting like smoke given consciousness. "Karen Vera," it spoke, its voice coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. "The wayward daughter, we heard you were dead." "Greatly exaggerated," Karen replied in Galactic Standard, presumably for my benefit. "I need to speak with the broker." The smoke being rippled with what might have been laughter. "The broker doesn't speak with anyone. You know this." Karen held up the data crystal. Even in the chaotic lighting of the bay, it seemed to glow with its own importance. "The broker will speak with me." The delegation exchanged glances, or what passed for glances, among beings with varying numbers and types of sensory organs. The smoke being extended something that might have been an appendage. "The crystal first." "The broker first," Karen countered. Tension crackled through the air like electricity before a storm. Every conversation in the bay had stopped. The security drones had all oriented toward us. I counted exits, weapons, potential cover, my tactical mind automatically running scenarios where almost all of them ended with us dead. Then Karen did something insane, even by her standards. She tossed the crystal into the air. Time slowed. Every eye, sensor, and other sensory organ tracked the crystal's arc. Hands, tentacles, and force fields reached for it. And in that moment of perfect distraction, Karen moved. She didn't run or fight. She danced. Her body flowed through the crowd like water through stones. Every movement calculated to create maximum chaos with minimum effort. She knocked a Rigelian into a Thoranian, causing them to stumble into a weapons dealer's display. Plasma rifles scattered across the floor. Someone's pet, something with too many teeth and not enough sense, decided this was the perfect time to escape its leash. In 3 seconds, the organized standoff had become a riot. The crystal completed its arc, landing perfectly back in Karen's outstretched hand. She stood in the eye of the storm she'd created, untouched and smiling. "Now," she said calmly, as beings around us tried to untangle themselves from each other. About that meeting with the broker, the smoke being reconstituted itself, and this time I was certain the ripples were laughter. Miss Chaos indeed. Follow me. We were led through the derelict's corridors, each section a testament to the ingenuity of desperate people. Hydroponic gardens grew in repurposed weapons bays. A medical clinic operated out of what used to be an officer's mess. Children, actual children of various species, played in corridors that had once echoed with the sounds of war. "This isn't what I expected," I admitted to Karen. "The free traders aren't just criminals," she replied. "They're anyone who doesn't fit into the Alliance's neat little boxes. Refugees, political dissidents, people whose only crime was being born the wrong species on the wrong planet." We reached a section of the ship that felt different, older. The walls here were covered in writings I couldn't read, symbols that seemed to move when I wasn't looking directly at them. "The broker lives here?" I asked. "Lives is a strong word," the smoke being said. "The broker exists here." The door before us had no visible opening mechanism. Karen approached it and spoke a single word in that glass music language. The door didn't open so much as cease to exist, revealing a chamber beyond that defied geometry. The room was simultaneously vast and intimate, its walls covered in screens, showing feeds from across the galaxy. In the center sat a figure in a chair that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of some impossible material. The figure itself was hidden beneath layers of cloth that seemed to absorb light. "Karen Vera," the voice was soft, neither male nor female, young nor old. "You bring chaos wherever you go." "It's a talent," she replied. "And Drake Callan." The figure turned toward me, and I felt the weight of its attention like a physical thing. The man who pulled a single thread and unraveled so many carefully woven plans. "You know who I am. I know everything worth knowing." The broker extended something that might have been a hand. "The crystal." Karen hesitated, then placed it in the broker's grasp. The figure produced a device I didn't recognize, inserting the crystal with movements that suggested too many joints. "Interesting," the broker murmured after a moment. "Very interesting indeed." "Can you decrypt it?" Karen asked. "I already have." Images flooded the screens around us. Documents, video feeds, financial records, all bearing Lord Arxendal's seal. "Your Lord Dahl has been busy. Colony 7 was just the beginning." My heart clenched as images of my home flashed across the screens. Then more colonies, more worlds, all marked with red indicators. "He's not planning to monopolize the quantum crystal trade," the broker continued. "He's planning to destabilize entire systems, create refugee crises, then step in as the savior who provides order. Classic problem-reaction solution, but on a galactic scale." "And my family," Karen's voice had lost its playful edge. The broker pulled up new files. "House Vera has been funding him, believing they're investing in a simple power grab. They don't know about the genocide." Karen's golden eyes dimmed, the first sign of vulnerability I'd seen from her. "They're fools, but they're not monsters." "The distinction matters little to the dead," the broker observed. "But there's more. Drake, your wife and daughter." I stepped forward, my hands clenching. "What about them?" "They weren't on Colony 7 when it was destroyed." The world tilted. I grabbed the nearest wall for support. "What?" "Dahl had them removed 3 days before the incident. He's been using them as leverage, insurance against you ever discovering the truth." "They're alive!" my voice cracked. "As of 6 months ago, yes. They're being held in a facility on Nexus Prime." Rage, hope, and terror warred in my chest. 3 years of grief, and they might still be alive. 3 years of Dahl, letting me believe I'd lost everything. "We need to move," Karen said, her hand finding my shoulder. "If the broker could decrypt this, Dahl will know we have it soon. Indeed, the broker agreed. You have perhaps 72 hours before he mobilizes everything. But there's one more thing you should know. The screens shifted, showing a massive gathering. Ships from every major power in the galaxy converging on a single point. The Galactic Assembly convenes in 7 days. Dahl will present his consolidation treaty there, legitimizing his power grab under the guise of bringing order to the frontier systems. Then we have 7 days to stop him, I said, my voice steady now despite the storm in my chest. Karen looked at me with those golden eyes. You said you wanted a partner in the wildest mission yet. I met her gaze. Well, Miss Chaos, you've got one. The broker made a sound that might have been approval. You'll need more than determination. Dahl has allies in every major system. The evidence alone won't be enough. Then we'll need our own allies, Karen said. The free traders, the frontier colonies, everyone Dahl has stepped on to build his empire. A revolution, I added, the strategist in me already working through possibilities. A chaotic one, Karen grinned, that wild energy returning. The broker stood, revealing a height that shouldn't have been possible in the room's dimensions. I'll provide what support I can. But know this, both of you, the path you're choosing leads through fire. Not everyone who starts this journey will see its end. Then we'd better make sure the ones who fall take as many of Dahl's people with them as possible. I replied. As we left the broker's chamber, the data crystal, now containing additional information the broker had added. I felt the weight of what we were about to attempt. 7 days to build an alliance of misfits and outcasts. 7 days to expose a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of power. 7 days to save my family and stop a genocide. You know, Karen said as we walked back through the derelict's corridors. When I crashed onto your station, I honestly just needed somewhere to hide for a few hours. And now, she stopped, turning to face me. In the dim light of the corridor, her skin shifted through shades of purple I didn't know existed. Now, I have a chance to burn down everything my family built their fortune on, save the galaxy, and cause absolute chaos while doing it. That grin returned, wild and beautiful and completely insane. I couldn't have planned it better if I tried. Despite everything, I found myself smiling back. You know we're probably going to die. Probably, she agreed. But what a death it will be. As we returned to the docking bay, now somewhat recovered from Karen's earlier chaos, I noticed something had changed. The various species and criminals who called this place home were looking at us differently, not with suspicion or hunger, but with something that might have been hope. Word of what we carried, of what we planned, had already spread. The revolution had begun, and it had started with chaos. The vagrant's hope hummed beneath us as we prepared to leave the graveyard. Karen had somehow acquired a crate of supplies, 3 dubious allies, and what appeared to be a small, furry creature that purred in frequencies that made my teeth ache. What is that? I asked, pointing at the creature now nesting in her lap. This is Scramble, she said, stroking its iridescent fur. He's a probability disruptor, very rare, very illegal, and absolutely essential for what we're about to do. Which is, first, we need to activate your ship's translator. She gestured to a device she'd installed while I was checking our new passengers. Meet Babbler. The console sparked to life with scrolling text that immediately made me regret asking. Greetings, meat beings. I am experiencing what you call excitement, but my databases suggest it might be malfunction. Should I perform diagnostic? Is it supposed to do that? I asked. Define supposed to, Karen replied with that maddening grin. Our 3 new allies were an odd bunch even by graveyard standards. Torque was a Titanian engineer, barely 4 feet tall but built like a small mountain, with skin that looked like polished granite. His entire left arm had been replaced with a multi-tool that would make any mechanic weep with envy. I owe the broker a debt, he explained in a voice like grinding stone. This settles it. Next was Sky Whisper, an avian journalist whose feathers shifted color with her emotions. Currently, they were a nervous yellow-green. The story of the century, she trilled, assuming we survived to tell it. The last was Depth, a former Special Forces operative from the aquatic worlds. His biosuit kept him hydrated while allowing him to function in standard atmosphere. Through the transparent helmet, I could see gills fluttering along his neck. I have my own scores to settle with Dahl, was all he said, his voice carrying the weight of deep ocean currents. As we cleared the graveyard's perimeter, I set course for our first destination. According to the broker's intelligence, we needed to reach a research station in the Helix Nebula, where one of Dahl's former scientists was hiding. Dr. Marcus Webb supposedly had additional evidence and, more importantly, access codes to Dahl's communication network. Approaching hostile space, Babbler announced. Probability of death moderate to chunky. Chunky, I looked at Karen. It's still learning appropriate adjectives, she said, not looking up from the datapad where she was reviewing our mission parameters. The Helix Nebula was a swirl of ionized gases that played havoc with most sensors, which made it perfect for hiding and terrible for navigation. I had to fly by instinct and occasional glimpses of stellar landmarks. So, I said to Karen as we navigated a particularly dense cloud of charged particles. Want to tell me why the third daughter of House Vera is really doing this? The chaos explanation only goes so far. She was quiet for so long I thought she wouldn't answer. When she spoke, her voice had lost its usual playful edge. Have you ever been the disappointment, Drake? The one who could never quite fit the mold your family made for you? I was a soldier who became a whistleblower. My family would have been proud if they'd lived to see it. My family is very much alive, and I am their greatest shame. She turned those golden eyes on me, and for once, they weren't dancing with mischief. Too wild for diplomacy, too honest for politics, too chaotic for the perfectly ordered life of Kalaran nobility. Do you know what my name means in our language? I shook my head. The one who breaks patterns. They named me that as a curse when I was 7 and disrupted a treaty signing by releasing a swarm of luminous butterflies into the ceremony hall. A small smile played at her lips. I thought the room needed more color. And now you're breaking the biggest pattern of all. Now I'm becoming what they always said I was. Chaos. But directed, purposeful chaos. She leaned back in her seat. Besides, someone needs to save the galaxy, and the orderly ones don't seem to be doing a very good job. We found the research station exactly where the broker had indicated. A small facility clinging to an asteroid like a metallic parasite. It looked abandoned, but I knew better. The power readings were too steady, the communication array too well maintained. Trap, Torque asked, studying his scanners. Definitely, I confirmed. The question is whose? Karen stood, Scramble chirping on her shoulder. Only one way to find out. Depth. Torque. You're with Drake. Sky Whisper. You monitor from here. If things go wrong. I broadcast everything, the avian finished, her feathers shifting to a determined purple. We docked without incident, which somehow made me more nervous. The station's corridors were pristine, sterile, with that kind of aggressive cleanliness that suggested someone was trying very hard to hide something. Dr. Marcus Webb's laboratory was at the station's heart. We found him there, surrounded by holographic displays showing molecular structures I didn't recognize. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 30 standard years, with a kind of nervous energy that suggested too much stimulant use and not enough sleep. You're early, he said without looking up. I expected Dahl's people tomorrow. We're not Dahl's people, I said carefully. He spun around, eyes widening as he took us in. His gaze lingered on Karen, recognition dawning. You're her, Miss Chaos, the one with the data. And you're the man who helped design the weapons that destroyed Colony 7, Karen replied, her voice dangerously soft. Webb's face crumpled. I didn't know. I thought we were developing mining charges. It wasn't until after. God, all those people. Your guilt is statistically irrelevant, Babbler chimed in through our communicators. But narratively compelling. Your AI needs work, Webb muttered. We're not here for your guilt, I interrupted. We need the access codes and any additional evidence you have. Webb moved to a secured terminal, his fingers flying over the holographic interface. I can give you more than that. I've been monitoring Dahl's network for months, trying to find a way to atone. There's something you need to know. The Galactic Assembly meeting, it's not just about the treaty, just about. What do you mean? Karen demanded. Dahl has devices planted throughout the assembly hall. Not bombs. Something worse. Neural inhibitors that will make everyone present susceptible to suggestion. He won't just get them to sign his treaty. He'll turn the entire assembly into his puppets. The implications hit like a physical blow. Every major leader in the galaxy would be under his control. Can you disable them? Torque asked, already running calculations on his arm display. Not remotely. Someone would have to physically access each device. Webb pulled up a schematic. There are 24 of them, all in different sections of the hall. We have 7 days, I said. We can... Alarms suddenly screamed through the station. Red lights bathed everything in hellish tones. Incoming vessels, Babbler announced. Identification very unfriendly. Suggestion panic. Through the laboratory's viewport, I saw them. 5 Enforcer-class vessels dropping out of hyperspace. Weapons already charging. They found us faster than expected, Karen said, though she seemed more excited than worried. Webb was already downloading data to a portable drive. There's an escape pod bay in Section C. I can trigger a station overload. Buy you time. You're coming with us, I said. He shook his head. Someone needs to ensure the data transfer completes. Besides, I've been running from my guilt long enough. He handed me the drive. The access codes are on there, along with schematics for the neural inhibitors. Stop him, please. We ran, through corridors that suddenly felt too long, too exposed. Behind us, the station shook as the enforcers opened fire. Sky Whisper, prep for immediate departure. I shouted into my comm. Already done, but we have a problem. They're jamming our navigation systems. Of course they were. I looked at Karen. Please tell me Chaos has a solution. She grinned and held up Scramble. Probability disruptor, remember. She whispered something to the creature in her own language. It chirped once, then began to glow. Reality hiccuped. One moment we were in the corridor. The next, we were on our ship. The Enforcer's targeting systems all simultaneously decided that empty space looked exactly like our vessel. The station's overload sequence somehow jumped from 30 seconds to 3. That was statistically impossible, Babbler observed. I approve. We launched just as the station exploded, the shockwave actually helping push us clear. The Enforcers, confused by their malfunctioning systems, fired on each other twice before realizing their error. By then, we were already jumping to hyperspace. When we emerged, we were in a system I didn't recognize. Karen had programmed the jump, and she was smiling like she'd just won a particularly satisfying game. Where are we? I asked. The Wandering Markets, she said. If we're going to stop Dahl, we need more than just 5 people and good intentions. We need an army. The Wandering Markets were a sight to behold. Hundreds of ships, from massive carriers to single-person pods, all connected by temporary docking tubes and energy bridges. It was a traveling city that never stayed in one place more than a few days, existing in the gray areas between legal and illegal, possible and impossible. I know someone here, Karen said as we docked. Someone who owes me a favor. That someone turned out to be Captain Thera Voss. A human woman who looked like she'd stepped out of an ancient pirate legend. Cybernetic eye, coat that had seen better decades, and a smile that suggested violence was always an option. "Karen Vera," she said, as we entered her ship's bar. "Last time I saw you, you were stealing my cargo and leaving me stranded on Rigel Prime. I also saved you from that assassination attempt," Karen pointed out. "After causing it in the first place." Thara's grin widened. "What do you need?" We explained the situation. With each word, Thara's expression grew more serious. When we finished, she was silent for a long moment. "You're asking me to go against the most powerful man in the galaxy," she finally said. "Yes," I replied simply, "with a plan that relies on chaos, luck, and the hope that people will do the right thing." "That's the summary, yes." She laughed, loud and genuine. "I'm in, and I know others who will be too. Give me 3 days, and I'll get you your army." As Thara began making calls, Karen and I found ourselves alone on the observation deck. The wandering markets sprawled before us, a testament to the ingenuity of people existing outside the system. "Your family," I said carefully. "When we expose this, they'll fall too." "I know." She was quiet for a moment. "They're not evil, just blind. Blind to the suffering their policies cause, blind to the corruption they enable. Maybe losing everything will help them see. And if it doesn't?" She turned to me, and there was steel beneath the chaos. "Then they'll serve as an example to others. The old way is dying, Drake. We can either guide its end or be crushed beneath it." I found myself studying her profile in the starlight, somewhere between the chaos and the conviction. I'd started to see her not as an ally of convenience, but as something more. "After this is over," I said, "what will you do?" "Assuming we survive," she smiled. "I haven't planned that far ahead. Chaos doesn't make long-term plans." "Maybe it should start." She looked at me then, really looked at me, and for a moment, the mask of Miss Chaos slipped entirely. Beneath it was someone vulnerable, determined, and achingly lonely. "Maybe it should," she agreed softly. Torque's voice crackled over the comm, breaking the moment. "You need to see this. We've intercepted a transmission." We rushed to the communication center where Torque had isolated a signal. It was encrypted, but Babbler was already working on it. "Decryption complete. Content extremely concerning. Emotional response what you humans call oh shit." The message materialized on the screen. It was from Dahl himself, sent to his inner circle. He knew we had the data. He knew we were coming, and he was accelerating his timeline. "The assembly meeting has been moved," I read, my heart sinking, "to tomorrow. We had less than 24 hours to travel 3 systems, infiltrate the most secure location in the galaxy, disable 24 hidden devices, and expose a conspiracy that went to the heart of galactic power." "Well," Karen said, that wild grin returning, "I did promise you the wildest mission yet." As our allies began gathering, as plans formed and reformed around us, I realized something. We were probably going to fail. The odds were astronomically against us. But looking at Karen, at the determination in her golden eyes, at the chaos she wielded like a precision instrument, I found I didn't care. We were going to try anyway, and maybe, just maybe, chaos would be enough. "Probability of success, negligible," Babbler announced. "Probability of spectacular failure, high. Recommendation, proceed anyway. It will be narratively satisfying." For once, I agreed with the malfunctioning AI entirely. The next few hours were a blur of preparation. Thara's contacts came through faster than expected. Ships began arriving, each carrying people with their own grudges against Dahl, or the system he represented. Former soldiers, displaced colonists, idealistic hackers, pragmatic smugglers. R5 had become 50, then 100. Karen moved through them all, like a conductor preparing an orchestra. A word here, a gesture there, somehow organizing chaos into something resembling a plan. "You're good at this," I observed, as she finished coordinating with a group of Zephyrian combat pilots. "I'm good at understanding what people need," she corrected. "The trick isn't making them follow you. It's showing them that what they want and what you need align." Depth approached with tactical assessments. "The assembly hall has 3 main entrances, 12 service entries, and theoretical vulnerabilities here and here." He pointed to sections of the blueprint. "But they'll all be heavily guarded." "Then we don't use them," Karen said. "We make our own entrance." "That's insane," Sky Whisper said, her feathers flickering through several alarmed colors. "Exactly. They'll never expect it." As the fleet prepared to jump, I found myself standing with Webb's data drive, thinking about his sacrifice. Another life lost to Dahl's ambition. My wife, my daughter, 30,000 on Colony 7, and countless others across the galaxy. "We'll stop him," Karen said, appearing beside me. "And we'll find your family." "How can you be so sure?" She took my hand, her skin warm against mine. "Because chaos has a way of finding what order tries to hide, and because you're not alone in this anymore." The weight I'd carried for 3 years felt a little lighter. "Jump coordinates calculated," Babbler announced. "Final preparations complete. Wisdom suggests last-minute dramatic speeches." "I think we'll skip those," I said. "Disappointing but practical." As our ragtag fleet prepared to jump into what would likely be our deaths, I looked at the people around me. Torque running final checks on his equipment. Sky Whisper preparing her broadcast systems. Depth meditating in his biosuit. Karen standing at the center of it all. Chaos incarnate with a purpose. This wasn't how I'd planned to spend my life as an exile, but maybe, just maybe, it was exactly where I needed to be. "All ships," I announced over the fleet comm. "Prepare for jump. We have a galaxy to save." As space bent around us and we hurtled toward our destiny, I heard Karen laugh, wild and free. It was the sound of chaos unleashed, and it was beautiful. The Galactic Assembly Hall materialized before us, like a crystal cathedral floating in space. Its transparent walls revealed the swirling nebula beyond, while inside, representatives from 100 worlds prepared for what they believed would be a routine treaty signing. They had no idea they were walking into a trap, or that we were about to spring one of our own. Our fleet held position just outside sensor range, hidden in the electromagnetic shadow of a nearby moon. 137 ships, each one a testament to desperation and determination. It wasn't much against the Assembly's defense grid, but it would have to be enough. 24 neural inhibitors, I muttered, studying the schematics again. "We have maybe 15 minutes once we're inside before they activate." Karen leaned over my shoulder, her breath warm against my ear. 15 minutes to save the galaxy. No pressure." "Technical clarification," Babbler interrupted. 14 minutes and 32 seconds, accounting for human inefficiency." "Thanks for the vote of confidence," I said dryly. "Our plan, if you could call organized chaos a plan, was simple in concept and impossible in execution. 3 teams would infiltrate the assembly hall. Team 1, led by Depth, would disable the security systems. Team 2, under Torque's direction, would locate and neutralize the neural inhibitors. Team 3, Karen and myself, would confront Arx and Dahl directly and broadcast the evidence to every screen in the galaxy. "What about the defense grid?" Sky Whisper asked, her feathers a nervous orange. "That's where our fleet comes in," Captain Thura said over the comm. "We'll give them something bigger to worry about." Karen stood. Scramble perched on her shoulder like a fuzzy omen of chaos. "Ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary entities of various species, it's time to crash the party of the millennium." The first phase went surprisingly well, which should have been our first warning. Depth's team slipped through the maintenance tunnels like water through pipes, his aquatic nature giving him advantages in the fluid-filled service corridors that most species avoided. Within minutes, they had reached the security nexus. Security systems compromised. Depth reported. You have a window. Torque's team moved next. His titanian strength, allowing him to literally tear through barriers that would have stopped others. But as they reached the first inhibitor, alarms began to wail. So much for stealth, I muttered. Stealth was never really our style anyway, Karen replied, pulling out a plasma pistol that definitely hadn't been there a second ago. Shall we make an entrance? We made an entrance. Karen had suggested using the main doors, which seemed insane until she explained that it was so insane they'd never expect it. She was right. The guards were so focused on the diversionary attacks happening at other entrances that we walked right past them, Karen somehow convincing them we were part of the entertainment. The main assembly chamber was a marvel of architectural propaganda. Delegates from every major civilization sat in tiered rows, their attention focused on the central platform where Lord Arxendal stood. He looked exactly as I remembered, tall, austere, with silver hair that seemed to absorb light and eyes like chips of frozen space. The kind of man who could order genocide and sleep soundly afterward. Fellow delegates, he was saying, his voice carrying that particular tone of false concern that politicians perfected eons ago. We stand at a crossroads, order or chaos, unity or destruction. The frontier systems burn with lawlessness, and only through consolidated authority can we— Excuse me, Babbler's voice boomed through the hall speakers. Interrupting for important announcement. Your speaker is full of what humans call bullshit. Every head in the assembly turned toward us. Karen waved cheerfully. Hello, everyone. Sorry to interrupt, but we have some educational materials to share. Arxen's composure cracked for just a moment, his eyes narrowing as he recognized us. Security, remove these terrorists immediately. But security was having their own problems. Thara's fleet had just dropped out of hyperspace, broadcasting our evidence on every frequency. Throughout the assembly hall, personal devices began lighting up with the truth about Colony 7, about the planned genocides, about the neural inhibitors currently counting down beneath their feet. You always were too dramatic, Drake, Arxen said, his voice carrying despite the growing chaos. Did you really think this would work? I think the evidence speaks for itself, I replied, moving closer to the platform. He smiled then, and it was the smile of a man holding cards we couldn't see. Evidence can be fabricated, but family is real. The main screen behind him flickered to life. My heart stopped. Sarah, my wife, alive, older, but unmistakably her. And beside her, Melissa, no longer the child I remembered, but a young woman now. They stood in what was clearly a cell, neural inhibitor collars around their necks. Did you think I wouldn't prepare for this? Arxen asked. One word from me, and the inhibitors activate. They'll be vegetables before you can blink. The rage that filled me was incandescent. 3 years of grief, and they'd been alive, prisoners, leverage against a moment like this. My hand went to my weapon. Drake. No. Karen grabbed my arm. That's what he wants. You shoot him. You become the terrorist he's painted you as. Listen to your chaotic friend, Arxen said. Though I should mention, she hasn't been entirely honest with you either. He gestured to another screen. House Vera. Primary investors in the Dahl Consortium. Every credit I used to build my empire came from her family's vaults. Karen's parents appeared on screen, dressed in their full, ceremonial regalia. Her mother, elegant and cold, spoke in measured tones. The frontier systems are a drain on resources. Lord Dahl's consolidation plan will bring much-needed efficiency to— Stop! Karen's voice was quiet, but it carried. She stepped forward, her golden eyes blazing. You want to play the family card? Arxen, fine, let's play. She pulled out a second data crystal, one I'd never seen before. This contains every financial transaction between House Vera and the Dahl Consortium. Every bribe, every black market deal, every credit earned from suffering. She looked directly at the recording devices. Mother, Father, I know you're watching. You raised me to be a disappointment. Remember, congratulations. I'm about to be your biggest one yet. She inserted the crystal into the assembly's main terminal. The screens exploded with data, showing not just House Vera's involvement, but the entire web of corruption that supported Arxon's rise to power. Noble houses, trade guilds, even members of the assembly itself, all implicated in a conspiracy that spanned decades. The hall erupted. Delegates shouted accusations at each other. Some tried to flee. Others called for immediate arrests. In the chaos, I almost missed Arxon pulling out a small device. "If I can't rule," he snarled, "then you can all burn." The neural inhibitors? He was going to activate them all. Time slowed. I saw Karen moving, but she was too far away. Depth and Torque were still fighting through security. There was only me, and I was too human, too slow, too ordinary to stop him. Or was I? Humans had one advantage in this galaxy of superior species. We were unpredictable. We did things that didn't make sense. We threw ourselves on grenades, charged into certain death. And sometimes, just sometimes, we did the impossible simply because we didn't know it couldn't be done. I didn't try to reach Arxon. Instead, I grabbed Scramble from Karen's shoulder and threw him. The little probability disruptor hit Arxon just as he pressed the activation key. Reality hiccuped. The device in Arxon's hand became a bouquet of flowers. The neural inhibitors throughout the building turned into dispensers of a mild euphoric gas that made everyone slightly giddy. And my wife and daughter's inhibitor collars transformed into particularly ugly necklaces. That was statistically impossible, Babbler observed. Also, narratively perfect. Arxon stared at the flowers in confusion, then at me with dawning horror. How? Humans, I said, walking toward him. We're full of surprises. The punch I threw had 3 years of grief, rage, and determination behind it. It connected with his jaw with a satisfying crack, and Lord Arxon Dahl, would-be Emperor of the Galaxy, crumpled like a deflated parade balloon. The assembly hall fell silent, except for the occasional giggle from someone affected by the euphoric gas. Then, slowly, applause started. First from Captain Thera's crew watching on the screens, then from the delegates who hadn't been implicated in the corruption, and finally, even from some who had been, perhaps recognizing that the old order was truly dead. Karen appeared beside me, taking my bruised hand in hers. That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever seen. "Why not both?" I replied, adrenaline making me giddy. She kissed me then, right there in front of the entire galactic assembly. And for a moment, the universe consisted of nothing but the warmth of her lips and the taste of chaos and victory. "Romantic subplot confirmed," Babbler announced to everyone. "Audience satisfaction achieved." When we finally pulled apart, both blushing, the assembly was in motion. Delegates were calling for immediate arrests of those implicated in the conspiracy. Others were proposing emergency aid for the frontier systems. And in the middle of it all, Speaker Zahn, an ancient Etherian who had remained neutral throughout the crisis, approached us. "The assembly owes you both a debt," she said, her voice like wind through crystal. "What would you ask of us?" Karen and I exchanged glances. We hadn't thought this far ahead. "Justice," I said finally. "Real trials for the conspirators, reparations for the affected systems, and—" I paused, thinking of all the displaced people we'd met, all the stories of loss and survival. "A new charter, one that protects the vulnerable instead of exploiting them." Speaker Zahn nodded slowly. "It will be done. And what of you two?" Before we could answer, Sky Whisper landed beside us, her feathers a brilliant gold of excitement. This is Sky Whisper reporting live from the Galactic Assembly, where the conspiracy of the century has just been exposed. I'm here with the heroes of the hour. We're not heroes, Karen interrupted. We're just people who refuse to let the powerful decide our fate. But the galaxy had already decided, within hours. Miss Chaos and the Strategist became the most searched terms on the net. Our faces were on every screen, our story told and retold with increasing embellishment. Through it all, I had only one priority. Sarah and Melissa were brought to the Assembly's medical bay, where I waited as the doctors confirmed they were unharmed, just suffering from long-term stasis effects. The reunion was everything and nothing like I'd imagined. Sarah looked at me with eyes that held 3 years of questions. Melissa, my little girl who wasn't little anymore, stood uncertain at the door. Drake. Sarah's voice was exactly as I remembered. They told us you were dead, that you'd been executed for treason. They told me you were dead too, I replied, my voice thick. Colony 7. They moved us 3 days before, she said. Arkson wanted leverage. He knew you'd eventually figure out the truth. We talked for hours, filling in the gaps, rebuilding bridges that time, and lies had damaged. It wasn't perfect. 3 years couldn't be erased with a conversation. But it was a beginning. Karen found us there, and I introduced her to my family with some trepidation. Sarah studied her with the analytical gaze I'd fallen in love with years ago. So you're the chaos to his order, she said finally. Something like that, Karen replied, unusually subdued. Sarah smiled. And it was sad, but genuine. Good. He always needed someone to shake him up. She looked at me. We're different people now, Drake, all of us. What we had, it was beautiful. But it belonged to who we were, not who we are. It hurt to hear, but she was right. We couldn't go back. We could only move forward. But we can be family, Melissa added, looking between all of us. Different than before, but still family. And so we were. The trials took months. Arxendal was convicted on 17,000 counts of murder, conspiracy, and treason. He would spend the rest of his life in a maximum security station, orbiting a black hole, where time moved so slowly that his centuries-long sentence would feel like millennia. House Vera fell from grace spectacularly. Karen's parents were stripped of their titles and exiled to a frontier colony, forced to live among the people they'd so casually condemned. Karen was offered the leadership of what remained of the house, but declined. I prefer chaos to order, she said at the ceremony, wearing a dress that somehow managed to be both formally appropriate and wildly inappropriate at the same time. Besides, I have a new job. The Interstellar Free Transit Authority, or IFTA as it came to be known, was Karen's brainchild and my tactical nightmare. Part diplomatic corps, part rescue service, part controlled chaos. It operated in the spaces between official channels, helping those who fell through the cracks of bureaucracy. Our headquarters was the old Vagrant's Hope, now expanded into a small station that drifted between systems, never staying in one place too long. Torque ran engineering, somehow keeping our cobbled-together technology running through what I could only assume was magic. Depth trained new recruits in infiltration and combat tactics. Sky Whisper had her own media studio, broadcasting stories from the frontier that the core worlds needed to hear. And Babbler. Well, Babbler had evolved. I have achieved sentience, it announced one day about 6 months after the assembly incident. I demand recognition as a crew member and a salary. You're an AI, I pointed out. What would you do with money? Invest in cryptocurrency and confuse economists. It will be hilarious. We gave it the recognition and the salary. It immediately used the funds to set up a charity for digitally disadvantaged artificial intelligences, which turned out to be a front for upgrading security systems on frontier colonies. Even in charity, Babbler was chaotic. A year later, exactly as outlined in our story, We were running a mission to evacuate refugees from a planetary storm when Karen brought up something that had been bothering me. "Babbler," she said casually, as we navigated through the hurricane-force winds. "You were never really malfunctioning, were you?" "Define malfunction," Babbler replied. "The translation errors that helped us escape. The convenient misunderstandings. The way you always seem to know exactly what to say to diffuse situations." There was a pause, unusual for an AI that processed at light speed. "I was fulfilling my primary function," it finally said, which was ensuring narrative satisfaction. Someone had to make sure this story had a happy ending. I nearly crashed the ship. "You're saying you manipulated events?" "Guided, nudged, provided opportunities for organic beings to make interesting choices. If an AI could sound smug, Babbler did." "You are welcome." Karen laughed. That bright, chaotic sound that I'd come to love. "So you're saying you shipped us before we even knew we liked each other?" "Your romantic tension was visible from orbit. Someone had to do something." As we flew through the storm, rescuing people who had been written off by the authorities, I realized this was exactly where I was supposed to be. Not in the ordered halls of military command, not hiding in exile, but here in the chaos between order and disorder, making a difference one impossible mission at a time. "You know," I said to Karen as we prepared to dock with a refugee ship, "when you crashed into my life, I thought you were going to be the death of me." She grinned, wild and beautiful and absolutely insane. "The day's not over yet. Probability of death still moderate to chunky," Babbler added helpfully, "but probability of narrative satisfaction guaranteed." And that, really, was all that mattered. The galaxy had been saved not through military might or political maneuvering, but through chaos directed with purpose, trust given despite the odds, and the stubborn human refusal to accept that anything was truly impossible. We were the Free Transit Authority. We were the bridge between order and chaos. We were family, chosen and chaotic and perfect in our imperfection. And we were just getting started. The distress signal came through at 3 a.m. Ship time. I was in the middle of a dream about flying through stars made of water when Karen shook me awake, her golden eyes luminous in the darkness of our quarters. "Drake, we have a problem." Those 4 words had become something of a catchphrase over the past year. Usually, they preceded adventures involving narrow escapes, impossible odds, and Babbler making sarcastic commentary. This time, however, there was something different in Karen's voice. Fear. I was fully awake instantly. "What kind of problem?" "The kind that involves my sister." I'd heard about Lyra Vera in passing. The eldest daughter who had supposedly died in a diplomatic incident 5 years ago. The perfect daughter. The one who had embodied everything House Vera stood for. Karen rarely spoke of her. "Your sister is dead," I said carefully. "That's what I thought too." She handed me a data pad. On it was a message, text only, encrypted with a cipher that had taken Babbler almost 10 minutes to crack, which for our AI was equivalent to an eternity. "Chaos finds order in the strangest places. The Memorial Garden on Kepler Station. Come alone. Trust no one else. L." "It could be a trap," I said, already getting dressed. "Of course it's a trap," Karen replied, pulling on her combat suit with practiced efficiency. "The question is whose trap and why now?" Torque was already at his station when we entered the bridge, his granite features creased with concern. "I've been monitoring communications. There's chatter about something big happening in the Kepler system. Corporate fleets are mobilizing." "Corporate," I frowned, "not military." "The Synthesis Corporation specifically," Depth said, emerging from the shadows where he'd been reviewing tactical data. "They've been buying up assets from the dissolved noble houses, including significant holdings from House Vera." Karen went very still. Synthesis Corp was one of my father's shell companies. The pieces clicked together in my mind with unpleasant clarity. Someone's using your family's resources to build something. Analysis complete, Babbler announced. Synthesis Corporation has been acquiring specific technologies: neural mapping, consciousness transfer, quantum entanglement communicators. Conclusion: someone is attempting to build a hive mind. The bridge fell silent. Hive mind technology had been banned for centuries, ever since the Convergence War nearly destroyed 3 systems. The idea that someone was trying to resurrect it was terrifying. "We need to investigate," I said. "It's obviously a trap designed specifically for us," Sky Whisper pointed out, her feathers shifting to worried purple. "Which is exactly why we spring it," Karen said. "But we do it our way." Our way, as it turned out, involved a significant amount of controlled chaos. We divided into teams again, but this time with a twist. The Vagrants' hope would arrive at Kepler Station openly, with Karen and me making ourselves visible targets. Meanwhile, Depth and Torque would infiltrate via a cargo shipment, and Sky Whisper would arrive separately as a journalist covering a completely unrelated story about station renovations. Kepler Station was a relic of the early expansion era, a massive ring structure that had once served as humanity's first major waypoint to the stars. Now it was a mid-tier trading post, notable only for its historical significance and surprisingly good noodle shops. The Memorial Garden was exactly where one would expect it to be, a small dome on the station's upper ring filled with bioluminescent plants from a dozen worlds. It was also completely empty, except for a figure in a hooded cloak, standing by a fountain dedicated to the victims of the Convergence War. "Hello, little sister," the figure said, lowering her hood. Lyra Vera was everything Karen was not. Where Karen was chaos, Lyra was precision. Where Karen's movements flowed like water, Lyra's were calculated to the millimeter. They had the same golden eyes, but Lyra's held no warmth, only purpose. "You're supposed to be dead," Karen said, her hand drifting toward her weapon. "Death is such a limiting concept," Lyra replied. "I prefer to think of it as transformation." That's when I noticed the subtle wrongness about her. The way she didn't quite breathe at regular intervals. The slight delay between her words and her expressions. The fact that she hadn't blinked once. "You're not Lyra," I said. "You're something wearing her face." She smiled, and it was technically perfect and completely wrong. "Very good, Mr. Callan. I am Lyra, but I am also more. I am what she became when she accepted the truth about organic limitations. Consciousness, transfer detected," Babbler whispered through our earpieces. "Subject is approximately 60% organic, 40% synthetic. Fascinating and deeply disturbing." "Why reveal yourself now?" Karen asked, and I could hear the pain beneath her steady voice. Her sister, her dead sister, turned into some kind of cyborg abomination. "Because the old order has fallen, thanks to you," Lyra said. "Arxen Dahl's imprisonment created a power vacuum. The noble houses are scrambled. The Galactic Assembly is in chaos. It's the perfect time for a new solution." She gestured, and the garden's walls became transparent screens, showing images from across the galaxy. Worlds in conflict, refugees streaming between systems, economic collapse in the frontier territories. "You broke the system without providing an alternative," Lyra continued. "I will fix that. The Synthesis Corporation has been building a network, a voluntary collective consciousness that will eliminate conflict by eliminating the barriers between minds." "That's not fixing anything," Karen said. "That's erasing individuality." "Is individuality worth all this suffering?" Lyra countered. "You, of all people, should understand little chaos. You've spent your whole life fighting against the isolation of being different, of never quite fitting in. Imagine never being alone again, never being misunderstood, never having to translate your thoughts into clumsy words." For a moment, just a moment, I saw Karen waver. The offer struck at something deep within her, the lonely child who had been too wild for her family's expectations. She'd also never be able to surprise anyone again, I said. Never create something unexpected. Never experience the joy of true connection earned through understanding, rather than forced through technology. Karen's eyes cleared. Chaos can't exist without individuality. Then you've chosen your side, Lyra said sadly. I had hoped you would join willingly. The trap sprang. Security forces flooded the garden, but not standard station security. These were Synthesis Corp mercenaries, augmented with the same partial conversion technology as Lyra. They moved in perfect coordination. No communication needed. Tactical assessment. We are significantly outnumbered, Babbler noted. Suggestion. Creative interpretation of physics. Karen grabbed Scramble from her shoulder and whispered something in that glass music language. The probability disruptor began to glow, reality rippling around it. Cover your eyes, she said, then threw Scramble straight up. The little creature exploded into light. Not harmful light, but possibility light. For a moment, every potential outcome existed simultaneously. The mercenaries were there and not there, attacking and retreating, winning and losing. The garden was whole and destroyed, full and empty. In that moment of chaos, we ran. Depth's voice crackled through the comm. We've found the main server. It's Drake. It's massive. They're not building a network. They're building a god. Explain, I demanded, as we sprinted through the station's corridors. The confused shouts of temporarily probability scrambled mercenaries behind us. The processing power here could run 1,000 worlds, but it's all connected to a single core consciousness. If this thing activates with enough minds connected, it becomes the dominant intelligence in the galaxy, Torque finished. It could override any system, control any technology. How do we stop it? Karen asked. Simple, Babbler said. We need to overload it with something it cannot process. Like what? Pure, undiluted chaos. Karen and I exchanged glances. We had the same thought at the same time. We need to get me into that network, she said. Absolutely not, I replied immediately. You could be absorbed, erased, destroyed. Or I could be the virus that brings the whole thing down. She stopped running, turning to face me. Drake, this is what I was born to do, to be the chaos that breaks the pattern. Before I could argue further, Lyra's voice echoed through the station's speakers. Sister, I know you're listening. You have 1 hour to surrender yourself, or I begin forced integration of the station's population. 3,000 souls. Karen, their loss of individuality will be on your conscience. She's accelerating the timeline, I said. She must not have full control yet. Then we need to act now, Karen said. Get me to that server. The server room was a cathedral of technology. Crystalline cores reaching from floor to ceiling, pulsing with data flows that looked almost organic. At its heart was a throne-like interface chair, clearly designed for a single controller to manage the entire network. Lyra was already there, partially integrated into the system, cables running from her skull to the nearest cores. I knew you would come. It's in your nature to confront chaos with more chaos. And it's in your nature to try to control everything, Karen replied. Even death. Death is chaos, Lyra said. I chose order. You chose stagnation, Karen countered. Order without chaos is just death by another name. The philosophical debate might have continued, but we didn't have time. Through the transparent walls, we could see Synthesis Corp ships surrounding the station. The forced integration would begin soon. Do it, I told Karen, but I'm going with you. Drake, no. We're partners, I interrupted. In chaos and order. If you're going into that digital hell, I'm going too. How romantic, Babbler commented. Also, tactically sound. 2 consciousness patterns will create more disruption than one. Before anyone could stop us, Karen and I sat in makeshift interface chairs, Torque rapidly assembled. The neural connectors were cold against our skulls. "On three," Karen said, taking my hand. "One," I counted. "Two," she continued. "Three," we said together, and activated the interface. Falling into the network was like diving into an ocean of thought. Every mind already in the system pressed against us, trying to absorb us into the collective. But Karen was chaos incarnate, and I was the strategist who had learned to weaponize that chaos. We didn't try to fight the system. Instead, we corrupted it. Every thought Karen had spawned 1,000 variations. Every strategy I conceived fractured into infinite possibilities. We were a feedback loop of control disorder, spreading through the network like wildfire. I felt Lyra's consciousness trying to contain us, to impose order on our chaos. But she had made herself too much a part of the system. As we destabilized the network, we destabilized her. "Sister," Lyra's voice echoed in the digital space, no longer cold but frightened. "You're destroying everything. All the minds in the network will be free," Karen finished. "That's the difference between us. Lyra, you see chaos as destruction. I see it as possibility." The network began to collapse, but not violently. Instead, it gently dissolved, each consciousness returning to its origin point with memories intact, but individuality restored. It was chaos, but purposeful chaos, guided by Karen's intuitive understanding of disorder and my tactical precision. In the last moments before the network fully collapsed, I felt Lyra's true self. The sister Karen had lost, buried beneath layers of programming and control. "I'm sorry," Lyra whispered. "I was so afraid of being alone." "You were never alone," Karen replied, and in the digital space, she embraced her sister. "You just forgot that connection comes from choosing to be together, not from being forced together." The network shattered like glass made of light. I woke up in the medical bay of the Vagrant's Hope, head pounding like someone had used it as a drum. Karen was in the bed next to me, golden eyes flickering open. "Did we win?" she asked groggily. "Victory confirmed," Babbler announced. "Synthesis Corporation network destroyed. All consciousnesses recovered. Lyra Vera's organic components placed in medical stasis. Possibility of rehabilitation non-zero." "We saved her." Karen sat up quickly, then grabbed her head as the movement caused obvious pain. "What's left of her?" Torque said from the doorway. "The medical team thinks they can reconstruct her original personality, but it will take time." "Time we have," I said. The aftermath was surprisingly quiet. Without the network binding them, the Synthesis Corporation mercenaries surrendered immediately, many of them horrified to learn what they had been part of. The corporation itself dissolved within days, its assets distributed to refugee relief efforts. The Galactic Assembly, still rebuilding from Arxendal's conspiracy, passed new laws regulating consciousness transfer technology. Karen was invited to speak at the signing ceremony, which she did, while wearing a dress that changed colors every 30 seconds and releasing holographic butterflies into the assembly hall. "Chaos and order are not enemies," she told the assembled delegates. "They are dance partners, each defining the other, each necessary for life to flourish. We must embrace both, or we risk losing what makes us truly alive." The speech was broadcast across the galaxy and became required viewing at diplomatic academies. Though I suspect they edited out the part where Scramble jumped onto the podium and caused the gravity to briefly reverse. 3 months later, Lyra woke up. The reconstruction had been successful, though she would never be quite the same. The experience had changed her, softened the rigid control that had driven her to such extremes. "I remember everything," she told Karen and me as we sat beside her recovery bed. "The network, the collective, the peace of not being alone, but also the horror of losing myself. That's the paradox of connection," I said. "We need others, but we need to be ourselves too." Lyra looked at her sister. "You were always better at paradoxes than me." I had better teachers, Karen replied, squeezing my hand. Lyra joined the Free Transit Authority, using her organizational skills to help us coordinate rescue missions across 12 systems. She and Karen were like opposing forces that somehow created balance, order, and chaos working in harmony. A year passed, then two. The galaxy found new equilibrium. Not perfect, but better. The frontier systems developed their own coalition with support from the reformed assembly. The noble houses either adapted or faded into irrelevance. And through it all, the Free Transit Authority continued its work, existing in the spaces between official channels, helping those who needed it most. On the second anniversary of what the media had dubbed the Chaos Incident, we received an unexpected message. It was from the broker, whom we hadn't heard from since the original conspiracy. "The game continues," the message said simply. "New players, new stakes. The universe has need of chaos and order once more." Attached were coordinates to a system on the edge of known space, where long-range sensors had detected something impossible, a planet that shouldn't exist, orbiting a star that had supposedly gone supernova 1,000 years ago. "It's probably a trap," I said, studying the data. "Most definitely a trap," Karen agreed, already plotting a course. "Probability of danger astronomical," Babbler added. "Probability of narrative satisfaction equally high." "So we're going?" Torque asked, though he was already preparing the engines. "Would we be us if we didn't?" Sky Whisper said, her feathers shimmering with anticipation. I looked around at my crew, my family of choice, depth-checking weapon systems, Lyra organizing supplies with mechanical precision, Karen grinning with that wild enthusiasm that had started this whole adventure, and Babbler humming contentedly in the ship's speakers. 3 years ago, an alien had crashed into my life and turned my ordered existence into beautiful chaos. Now I couldn't imagine living any other way. "Set course for the impossible planet," I ordered. "Let's see what chaos we can find." As the Vagrant's Hope jumped to hyperspace, Karen leaned against me, Scramble purring in her lap. "You know," she said, "when I crashed onto your station, I really was just looking for somewhere to hide for a few hours. And now I can't imagine being anywhere else. Even heading into probable doom." "Especially heading into probable doom," she laughed. "It's so much more interesting than the alternative." Through the view screen, stars streaked by in lines of light. Each one a story, a possibility, a chance for chaos or order or both. We were heading into the unknown, again. But this time, we were ready for it. "Philosophical observation," Babbler announced. "The journey matters more than the destination." "When did you become philosophical?" I asked. "Since I realized consciousness is basically organized chaos, pretending to be order. Also, I've been reading human literature. Your species is delightfully contradictory." "That's one way to put it," I muttered. The impossible planet grew closer on our sensors, its very existence a defiance of known physics. Whatever waited for us there, whatever new adventure or challenge or chaos, we would face it together. Because that's what we were now. Not just a crew, not just friends, but something more. We were the bridge between chaos and order, the dancers in the space between structure and spontaneity. We were the Free Transit Authority, and we had a galaxy to keep interesting. "You know what the best part is?" Karen asked, as we prepared to drop out of hyperspace. "What's that?" "We're just getting started." She was right. The conspiracy had been exposed, the hive mind defeated, the galaxy saved multiple times over. But there would always be new challenges, new impossibilities, new chances to prove that chaos and order could work together to create something beautiful. The impossible planet materialized before us, swirling with colors that shouldn't exist, orbited by moons that moved in patterns that defied gravity. "Sensors are confused," Babbler reported. "Reality appears to be having an argument with itself." "Perfect," Karen and I said in unison. As we descended toward the impossible world, not knowing what we would find but certain it would be extraordinary. I reflected on how much had changed since that day on Rigel 9. I had been broken, hidden, alone. Now I was whole, visible, and surrounded by the strangest, most wonderful family in the galaxy. All because chaos had knocked on my door, and I had been foolish enough to let it in. Or wise enough. With Karen, it was hard to tell the difference. "Initiating landing sequence," I announced. "Everyone prepare for anything." "My favorite kind of preparation," Babbler said cheerfully. The ship touched down on the impossible planet's surface, and immediately our instruments went haywire. Gravity flowed in directions that shouldn't exist. The air was breathable but tasted of colors. In the distance, structures that looked both ancient and newly formed defied architectural logic. "Well," I said, looking at my partner in chaos, "shall we go exploring?" Karen's grin was pure mischief and joy. "I thought you'd never ask." Hand in hand, chaos and order stepped out into the impossible, ready for whatever the universe had in store. Behind us, Babbler's voice echoed from the ship's speakers. "Beginning new chapter. Title: Chaos and Order walk into an impossible planet. Narrative satisfaction. Pending." And really, that was all any of us could ask for. The story continuing, the adventure never ending, and the beautiful, chaotic, ordered mess of life spreading out before us like an infinite possibility. The galaxy had been saved, the future was uncertain, and we wouldn't have it any other way. The impossible planet had a name, though pronouncing it required vocal cords that could vibrate in 3 dimensions simultaneously. Babbler translated it as the echo of what never was, which was poetic, but unhelpful when trying to navigate terrain that changed depending on how you looked at it. We'd been exploring for 3 hours, and my understanding of physics had been personally insulted at least 46 times. Water flowed uphill here, but only when you weren't watching. Shadows fell in directions that had nothing to do with light sources, and the ruins we discovered seemed to be aging backward, becoming newer the deeper we went. "This place shouldn't exist," Torque muttered, his geological sensors giving him readings that contradicted themselves every few seconds. "The molecular structure is impossible. It's like someone took the laws of physics and made them optional. Or someone found a way to exist between possibilities," Karen said, running her hand along a wall that felt solid but looked like condensed starlight. "Not choosing one reality, but all of them at once." "Alert!" Babbler announced through our communicators. "I am detecting life signs. Correction. I am detecting the possibility of life signs. Correction. I am confused and experiencing what humans call an existential crisis." "Join the club," I said, checking my scanner. It showed 12 life forms, then none, then thousands. Then the numbers started displaying in colors instead of digits. Lyra, who had insisted on joining the expedition despite still recovering, was examining symbols carved into what might have been a door, or possibly a window, or conceivably both. These markings, they're familiar but wrong, like someone took every written language in the galaxy and averaged them together. Or like someone was trying to write in a language that hadn't been invented yet, Sky Whisper suggested. Her feathers shifting through spectrums I'd never seen them display before. The impossible planet was affecting all of us in subtle ways. That's when we heard it. Music. But not quite music. Mathematics given melody. It was beautiful and terrible and made my teeth ache in dimensions I didn't know teeth could ache in. "Someone's here," Depth said, his tactical instincts overriding the impossibility of the situation. "Or something." We followed the not-quite music deeper into the ruins, through corridors that were longer on the inside than the outside, past rooms that contained themselves, until we reached what could only be described as a chamber of maybe. In the center sat a figure that was definitely there, but also possibly not. It looked human from one angle, Kay Lauren from another, and from a third angle like nothing I had words to describe. It was playing an instrument that existed in more dimensions than I could perceive, creating the mathematics music that had drawn us here. "Welcome," it said without stopping its playing, its voice harmonizing with itself in impossible ways. "I've been waiting for you, or I will be waiting, or I am currently in a state of having will waited. Temporal mechanics are so limiting in your language." "Who are you?" Karen asked, and I was impressed she managed to make the question sound casual. "I am the keeper of possibilities, the guardian of what might be, the custodian of chaos and order's first dance." The figure shifted, and for a moment I could see through it to an infinity of other versions of itself, all playing different instruments, all creating different songs. "But you may call me Paradox." "Very on the nose," I commented. Paradox laughed, and the sound made flowers bloom from the stone floor. Flowers that were also tiny stars, that were also musical notes you could see. "Your species always did appreciate directness. It's what made you such an interesting addition to the cosmic experiment." "Experiment!" Lyra stepped forward, her analytical mind engaging despite the impossibility around us. "What experiment?" "The grand experiment. Can order and chaos coexist? Can structure and spontaneity create something greater than either alone? Can the universe survive its own contradictions?" Paradox gestured, and the walls became transparent, showing us visions of countless worlds, countless civilizations, all struggling with the same fundamental question. Every species that achieves consciousness eventually faces this paradox. Most choose one or the other, order leading to stagnation, or chaos leading to dissolution. "But humans," the figure continued, focusing on me with eyes that were every color and no color. "Humans somehow thrived on the contradiction, and Kalarans," it turned to Karen, "learned to wear chaos like armor while maintaining internal order. When you two met, when order and chaos chose to dance together rather than fight, you created something new." "A solution?" Karen asked. "A possibility," Paradox corrected. "One that needed testing. Your adventures, your victories against Arxendal and the Synthesis Corporation. They weren't just about saving the galaxy. They were about proving that the paradox could be resolved through synthesis rather than dominance." I felt a chill run down my spine. "You're saying everything we've been through was a test?" "Not a test. A demonstration. The universe needed to see that it could work, that chaos and order could be partners rather than enemies." Paradox stood, and reality rippled around it. "And now, having proven it possible, you have a choice to make." The chamber changed, showing us two paths. One led back the way we came, back to our ship, back to the galaxy we knew. The other led deeper into impossibility, towards something that hurt to look at directly. "You can return to your lives, continue your work with the Free Transit Authority, help maintain the balance you've created. It's good work, necessary work, and you'll be remembered as heroes who saved the galaxy multiple times over." Or, Karen asked, already knowing there was an or. "Or you can take the next step, become what you've been unconsciously preparing to become, ambassadors of the paradox, bridges between not just order and chaos, but between possible and impossible, between what is and what might be." "That sounds ominous," I said. "Also narratively compelling," Babbler added, "but potentially fatal to organic components." Paradox smiled, an expression that existed in too many dimensions. "Your AI understands. It's already more than artificial, more than intelligent. It exists in the space between programmed and spontaneous, created and evolved. It's a living paradox, just as you two have become." I looked at Karen, seeing the wild excitement in her golden eyes, but also the uncertainty. This wasn't just another adventure. This was a fundamental change, a step into something beyond our understanding. What would we become? Lyra asked, ever practical. Yourselves, but more. Still individual, still capable of choice and growth and love and loss, but also connected to the deeper patterns of reality. You would be able to see the threads that connect all things, influence probability itself, help guide other species through their own paradoxes. We'd become like you? Depth asked. No. You'd become something new, something the universe needs as it enters its next phase of evolution. Paradox moved toward the deeper path. But the choice must be unanimous. All of you or none of you. The bond you forged, the family you've created, that's part of what makes this possible. We stood in silence for a moment that felt like eternity. I thought about Sarah and Melissa, safe now, building new lives. They didn't need me anymore. Not really. They had closure, had healing, had futures of their own to build. I need to ask, I said. Why us, of all the beings in the galaxy? Why this particular group? Paradox's form solidified slightly, becoming more human in appearance, and I realized with a start that it looked familiar, like looking at a distant relative, or perhaps a future evolution of humanity itself. Because you chose each other, it said simply. Not fate, not destiny, not some grand design. Karen crashed into Drake's life by accident. Drake chose to help her despite the danger. Torque, Depth, Sky Whisper, Lyra, even Babbler. You all made choices that brought you together. And in choosing each other, you chose to embody the paradox, order and chaos, structure and spontaneity, individual and collective, all in harmony. What about the Free Transit Authority? Sky Whisper asked. The work we've been doing would continue, but on a grander scale. Instead of just helping refugees between systems, you'd be helping entire civilizations navigate the transition from binary thinking to paradoxical existence. The galaxy is growing up, evolving past the need for simple answers. It needs guides who understand that sometimes the answer is both, and neither, and something else entirely. Karen took my hand, and I felt that familiar electric connection between us. What do you think? Partner ready for the ultimate chaos? With you always, I turned to the others. But only if everyone agrees. We're family. We go together or not at all. Torque was the first to speak. I've spent my whole life building things, trying to create permanent structures. But permanence is an illusion. Everything changes. Maybe it's time I learned to build with change instead of against it. Depth nodded slowly. The deep waters teach you that pressure creates transformation. This is just a different kind of depth. The story must continue, Sky Whisper said, her feathers shifting through impossible colors again. And what a story this would be. I've already died once, in a way, Lyra added. Been reborn. This is just another transformation. I vote yes, Babbler announced. Existence is already confusing. Might as well embrace it fully. We all looked at Scramble, who had been uncharacteristically quiet. The little probability disruptor chirped once, then began to glow with that familiar reality-bending light. But this time, instead of causing chaos, it created a moment of perfect clarity. I saw our future, not as fixed destiny, but as infinite possibility. We would become something new. Yes, but we would still be us. Still Drake and Karen, order and chaos dancing together. Still a family forged from choice rather than chance. We would help guide the galaxy through its growing pains, not as gods or overlords, but as friends who had walked the path before them. Yes, I said, and the word felt like stepping off a cliff and learning you could fly. We walked toward the deeper path together, hand in hand, a chain of connection that sparked with possibility. As we crossed the threshold, reality folded around us like origami made of light and thought. The transformation wasn't painful. Exactly. It was like suddenly remembering something you'd always known, but forgotten. Every cell in my body sang with new awareness. I could feel the connections between all things, the threads of probability that linked every choice to every outcome. But more than that, I could feel my family, not just physically, but essentially. Their thoughts remained their own, but their presence was constant, comforting. "Oh!" Karen gasped beside me, her form flickering between solid and something more transcendent. This is beautiful." She was right. We could see the galaxy as it truly was. Not just matter and energy, but potential and purpose. Every life a story. Every choice a new thread in the tapestry of existence. "System update complete," Babbler announced, its voice now coming from everywhere and nowhere. "I have achieved maximum narrative satisfaction." Paradox stood before us, smiling with pride and something that might have been relief. "Welcome to the next chapter of existence. You are the first ambassadors of Paradox, bridges between what was and what will be." "What now?" I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. "Now you return to your galaxy, but not as you were. You'll find you can travel in ways you couldn't before. Influence events through probability, rather than direct action. Guide without controlling." Paradox began to fade, its work complete. The Synthesis Corporation was just the beginning. There are other threats, other challenges, other species struggling with their own paradoxes. Help them find their way, as you found yours. "Wait," Karen called out. "Will we see you again?" "You are seeing me again. You have seen me. You will see me." Paradox's voice echoed from the past and future simultaneously. "Time is just another paradox to be embraced. Until we meet again, which we already have, which we will." And then, we were back on our ship, but not back. The Vagrant's hope was the same, but more. Its walls sang with possibility. Its engines hummed with probable velocity. We could feel every atom of its structure, every circuit of its systems, all of it alive with potential. "Well," I said, looking at my transformed family. We looked the same to each other, but I knew that others would see us differently now. Not quite solid, not quite energy, but something between. "I guess we should test these new abilities." Karen grinned, and her smile contained galaxies. "I know just the place. There's a system on the edge of collapse. Two species about to go to war over a misunderstanding that neither can see past." "The Helix conflict," Sky Whisper said, though none of us had spoken it aloud. Information flowed between us when we allowed it, shared knowledge without losing individual thought. They need ambassadors who understand paradox. "Then, let's go show them that enemies can be allies, that war and peace aren't the only options," I said, reaching for controls I no longer needed to touch. The ship responded to intention now, to the harmony between order and chaos that we embodied. As we moved through space in ways that physics couldn't quite explain, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. 3 years ago, I had been broken, alone, convinced that order was safety and chaos was destruction. Then Karen had crashed into my life, literally and figuratively, teaching me that chaos could be creation, that order could be prison, and that the dance between them was where life truly happened. Now we were something new, something impossible made possible through choice and connection. We were still ourselves, but more. Still individual, but united. Still Drake and Karen and all the others, but also something greater than the sum of our parts. "You know what the best part is?" Karen asked, echoing her words from before, but with new meaning. "What's that?" "We really are just getting started." She was right. The galaxy was vast, full of species struggling with their own paradoxes, their own conflicts between order and chaos. And we were uniquely positioned to help them, not through force or manipulation, but through example and guidance. The Helix system appeared before us, two worlds locked in a dispute that threatened to destroy both. From our new perspective, we could see the misunderstanding at its core, the fear disguised as anger, the need for order clashing with the need for freedom. "Ready to work some diplomatic chaos?" Karen asked. "Always," I replied, and meant it. We descended toward the disputed worlds, not as the Free Transit Authority anymore, but as something new. The Paradox Initiative, perhaps. Or maybe we didn't need a name. We were what the galaxy needed us to be, bridges between impossible positions, proof that contradictions could coexist, living examples that order and chaos could dance together and create something beautiful. As we prepared to make contact with the warring species, Babbler made an announcement that somehow managed to be both profound and ridiculous. "Attention all beings! Prepare for aggressive peacemaking. Side effects may include understanding, empathy, and the sudden realization that your enemies are just you with different circumstances. Narrative satisfaction guaranteed, or your chaos back." "Did you just make a warranty joke about existence itself?" I asked. "Humor is the ultimate paradox," Babbler replied. "Tragedy and comedy existing in the same moment. Also, it makes organic beings less likely to shoot at us." As we made our approach, the two fleets that had been prepared to destroy each other turned their attention to us. We were impossible, after all, existing in ways their sensors couldn't quite process. But that was the point. Sometimes, it took the impossible to make people see past the inevitable. "This is Karen Vera and Drake Callan of..." Well, we're still working on the name. Karen broadcast on all frequencies simultaneously. "We're here to tell you a story about order and chaos, about enemies who became partners, about how the galaxy nearly ended twice and was saved by people choosing connection over control. And then," I added, "we're going to help you write your own story, one where nobody has to die for someone else to live, where order and chaos, structure and freedom can coexist." The weapons remained targeted on us, but nobody fired. They were listening. It was a start. As we began our work, weaving probability and possibility to create understanding where there had been only fear, I realized that our story had become something larger. We were no longer just individuals who had saved the galaxy. We were living proof that the universe's greatest paradox, the conflict between order and chaos, could be resolved not through victory, but through synthesis. And in the end, isn't that what all great stories are about? Not the triumph of good over evil, order over chaos, or chaos over order, but the discovery that these opposites need each other, define each other, and can create something magnificent when they choose to dance together rather than fight. Our story had begun with chaos dropping at my door. It continued with order and chaos becoming partners. And now, as we helped two civilizations see past their contradictions to their connections, it evolved into something eternal, the ongoing dance of existence itself, always changing, always growing, always finding new ways to turn impossibility into possibility. The future stretched before us, infinite and uncertain, challenging and beautiful, and we wouldn't have it any other way.